Yearning to play a few rounds of Gwent. That ought to set me straight.
Welcome to Commander's Horn, episode 62. Today I'm joined by TrueDawn and Delta65 for an absolutely packed episode covering two recent dev streams, some GwentSlam reactions, and some love to Northern Realms, who are currently embroiled in a faction war against Skellige as we speak. All this and some other stuff, I don't know yet because it's a live episode of Commander's Horn. Thanks for joining us, everyone.
Hey, it's good to be here.
Hello.
Sorry for that. Yeah, I'm super excited to talk about cards. I like a lot of what's going on. I'd be interested to get your guys' thoughts on it as well.
Same. I'm really excited. We have seen some amazing cards tonight and last week as well. And McBeard missed most of them, so...
Yeah, so we just got off the dev stream. It just finished, so we're gonna maybe just lead off with that for sure. Dev stream was a quick 20 minutes. The Berja and Luigi just gave us what we wanted to see. It's like, here are some cards. Have fun. See you guys later. Like, that's really how fast it felt. Yeah. I think I was like just finishing off some of the graphics for the podcast, and I'm like, wait, what? So, in that case, I mean, that's fine, right? I mean, we are happy to speculate and ruminate about what we might see for sure.
It's interesting coming from like the Magic community, where like spoiler season is kind of like this whole thing. They'll do like a couple a day, and they'll like have articles associated with them. Like they'll give them to content producers, and then they'll like write their thoughts down and stuff. So I've like personally grown accustomed to that method, where like these cards like kind of get some breathing room on their own, where like each one gets a spotlight, and there's like someone gets to write stuff about it and like talk about it a bit, as opposed to just kind of like the here's 20 cards dump. Like I don't hate it. I just like I'm accustomed to something else.
Mm.
We all are, right? In Hearthstone, it's the same system as in Magic the Gathering. Basically, you give them to content creators, and then they introduce the card, which we did it with Gwent in the past as well, right?
Yeah, here and there we've done it.
Yeah.
I've had
non-zero.
Not this time, though.
Well, there's like, they got 100 cards. 100 cards coming.
Yeah, we still have stuff. I assume a non-zero amount will go to content producers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because they're talking about like a midwinter update, and they're releasing these cards really fast now. They said there's going to be another dump this week, they said. So I wonder, like, if they're going to be giving stuff to content creators and stuff like that for reveals, it may have to be soon, because I have a feeling that this is like coming a little bit sooner than maybe we think. Yeah. I think that they're previewing a lot of these cards. Like they have a release schedule. They are trying to cram it all in before Challenger, or maybe they'll do like a final dump on Challenger. Maybe that's where like maybe a lot of people at Challenger might be able to do it. I'm not really sure. I really don't know. All this is news to me personally.
No, Challenger would definitely be a good venue to showcase some stuff from the new set. So we'll definitely get, like, they may not do card spoilers. Like we might find out the specifics of how they changed rows or something on Challenger. But like we'll definitely hear about the patch during Challenger.
I'm hoping we will get to see stuff like the new leaders at Challenger. I think that would be really great.
Yeah, new leaders is another, like, there's a lot of unknowns right now, which is kind of like the interesting speculation part whenever like a new, this isn't really an expansion. I think this is still fleshing out the core set, as we haven't even launched yet, but it does feel like a new expansion with this amount of cards, bigger than Nilfgaard patch. So I think that whenever like new expansions get teased in card games, there are a lot of unknowns. Like usually it's like we need to wait to see what the full set is like, but now it's like we need to wait to see like what new mechanics are like if there's going to be any rule rewrite. So it's really, that's why I think when we're going to talk about some of these new cards, it's going to be a little bit on the higher level. I think that like some values are probably not finalized. They even said that on the stream.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And some mechanics are probably and there's probably some stuff there that really maybe won't make sense, like Moonlight and stuff like that. So like we're not really sure what is real and what is like worth getting worried about, or maybe there's some stuff that's already sleeping on us and we don't even realize how good it is.
Yeah. We have a lot to figure out, especially because Discover or Spawn is like so prevalent in this set. That's a mechanic you can only reevaluate when you understand the pool that it's pulling from, and we don't know that. So
yeah, stuff like Winch seem really good on the first look right now with the pool we have, but if this set adds like 2 more trash machines, then all of a sudden the card becomes not so good anymore.
Yeah, I wanted to actually talk. I want to pick up that point right after I do some intro stuff, which I'm glad we jumped right into the conversation. But I do want to say that we didn't get a chance to really introduce the guests on the show today. So I just want to say thanks once again to TrueDawn joining us. It's kind of a crossover episode of the podcast because we have one of the co-hosts from the Tier 2 podcast, Merchant and Petrify, and TrueDawn do a great podcast every week as well on Merchant's channel. So it's great to have you. Say hello to everybody.
Hey, it's good to see you guys here over at McBeard's channel. This is fun to do.
And of course, I'm also joined by Delta, a friend of the show, of course, previously on the podcast in a Commander's Roundtable episode, and also a very good player you can find at the top of the ladder when he wants to try and he's not wanting to face Mill. So welcome back, Delta. It's good to have you as well.
It's always a pleasure, McBeard. Thank you for having me.
Of course. It is my pleasure as well to have you. This episode of Commander's Horn is live recorded on Twitch on my channel at twitch.tv/McBearded. You can find all episodes of Commander's Horn at commandershorn.com. You can subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, and other podcasting apps. Send your emails to commandershornpodcast@gmail.com or tweet at us at Commander's Horn. I'm going to just wing this fake ad that I'm doing because I didn't have time to write it. I'm going to say this week's show is brought to you by our sponsor, Doodoo's Facelift service. If you are looking like Uma, maybe he can help you. Terrible, I know. It definitely sounds like I spent just a second thinking about it. But of course, this episode is truly brought to you by our commandos, our patrons at patreon.com/commandershorn. Thanks for keeping the mics on and the podcast ad-free. Let's go right back into talking about the dev stream. Delta, you just talked about Wench, and then you also said something really important. You said Wench seems pretty good. Winch being the one of the new Northern Realms bronze specials that is spawn a, is it spawn or just play a random? Is it
Spawn.
play a random?
It's so this is something I want to talk about real quick. The discover mechanic being called spawn is incredibly confusing, and they need to change it.
Yeah, it is.
I agree.
Yeah. It needs to be called something else. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they can't call it discover, but in this case, it is spawn. So spawn a bronze Northern Realms machine and boost it by 2. So you get to see a choice of 3, and you get to pick one. So that's really strong because there's really only one quote unquote bad Northern Realms machine in Catapult, and even then, if you're boosting it by 2, it's probably going to be okay. But you'll never pick it, right? Because you don't have to. But then you said, Delta, really important. What if they added 2 really bad machines? And now we're talking about stuff that Hearthstone does with its card pool, where they purposely add bad cards. So when you source cards from a random effect like Discover, or anything that deploys anything from a specific mana tier or anything like that, it makes it a bit more balanced, so you're not going to always have like good cards to pick from. Sometimes you might have a bad choice. So Gwent doesn't really do that. Gwent's always been on the standpoint of there being all the cards are good. Bronze should get you a value that you're always seeking, like 10 to 12 or so. And Winch is definitely going to be there plus 2. Winch almost seems too good, honestly. Like I think it's pretty good. I don't know what you guys think about that.
It's good.
I mean, like all of the machines are so analogous that the spread of outcomes you can possibly get is so narrow that you're essentially just like playing a machine in your deck that's too higher than it should be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
it also has some additional synergies, right? Like, just imagine your Hansel target is still in the deck, and you play Winch, and you get your reinforced siege towers, and all of a sudden you have 4 reinforced siege turrets on round 1, and that would be pretty damn broken.
Yeah, that's a thing. There's like a lot of little interactions. There's anything like spells, more spell synergy. Like for example, like we see like Tormented Mage and Damn Sorceress. Like there's like spell stuff going on, so you could like find Winch with Tormented Mage and stuff like that. Maybe there's some way to recur it.
Yeah, I think that Winch, that was a really good point, actually, Winch being able to supply you with your Henselt target while you still have 3 potentially in the deck. Like, that's real. I mean, it seemed like it would be a good card you could put in any Northern Realms deck, and it's probably Sheila can play this card as well, which is, like, even crazier to think. So you could open up Sheila, Reinforced Siege Tower, Henselt. Like, it's on the coin, that would be pretty brutal, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean,
definitely. Yeah. I would say unless they like add additional machines in this set, which are like really, really bad, this card will see play, definitely.
I don't know if I want them to do that, though. I don't know if I want them to add bad cards, like for the purposes of satisfying random spawns, because
usually like the cadence they've done it with in Hearthstone is like you let the card like Primordial Glyph exist for a while, and then like you make it worse over time.
Yeah, by adding bad cards, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it becomes worse over time in general, right? Because not all machines can be balanced. That's just a fact. Not all cards can be balanced, and with time, these kind of cards will always become worse. But it's just a question: how good are they at release? And right now, I think like obviously the meta will change, but at the meta, Winch would be an auto include for almost all Northern Realms decks.
Yeah.
So we're talking about maybe the idea of how a card might act under these kind of random effects and how these cards, you know, having choices. And I think there's a greater discussion that's happening right now about RNG in Gwent and kind of what is a good amount of RNG to be added and what might be a bad amount. Merchant has said some stuff about it. Swim has also said some stuff about it. How do you guys feel about cards like, let's say, Isengrim Outlaw, which is a card I'd like to talk about as well, but a card that seems to be like the entire core of that card is whatever you get from this new spawn mechanic. How do you guys feel about like a card like that being added to the game? I'll start with you two, Don.
I was talking to Merchant about this the other day as well, and I've talked about it on stream a bit. RNG to a point is good. Like you can't have none because then the games all play out the same and it's incredibly uninteresting, but there's also diminishing return on it where when you add too much, it removes player agency and you're also not having fun in that case either. So you want to be in like this Goldilocks zone of variance, and mechanics like spawn/discover are good places to be because from my experience, good RNG is the kind that changes what cards are present in a game rather than things that like influence the board. So for example, Isengrim, even though the range of cards you can get is pretty wide, he's just like you're getting a card, and then when you get that card, you can make decisions based on what you got and play in a certain way. But for example, something that does like damage randomly to something, like you just throw it out there and like whatever happens. Like that's bad RNG that you can't really play around. Things like Discover, you can make decisions based upon what you get and play accordingly. So I do like that stuff. It changes how the game is played and adds like sometimes you'll have a card in your deck that you wouldn't play in Constructed, and you'll have to be like, okay, how do I leverage this? And I like that stuff. I think that's cool.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree with that. Delta, how do you feel about it?
I totally agree with TrueDawn here. Like, we need RNG in Gwent because otherwise we are just putting points on a board and it becomes boring really quick. I can tell you that, especially if you have to grind 400 pro ladder games.
Yeah.
So nobody wants to do that. Variance is important in card games, as annoying as it might be sometimes. So we just need it to be controlled RNG instead of totally random RNG. Yeah. And I feel like most of these cards are good RNG.
Yeah.
I thought we had some good RNG in the past in Gwent as well. I remember old Ulrich, who used to pull a random card off the opponent graveyard. I thought always that was a good example. I liked it because we told Trump to take it to Challenger actually, and he stole like a thunder from a Square Tell player in the first round, and it actually worked out really well. I don't know, I always like that card. Like playing with the chances and stuff like that is nice. It just changes the pace of the game, and I like it.
Yeah, I mean,
you just go. I'm sorry.
It's cool. Live podcast. I think that I think that Udalric. I mean, when you talk about an RNG card, generally, like we're gonna make a lot of Hearthstone references, probably, guys, if you don't mind, because it is kind of like the RNG poster boy, I think. So when you talk about RNG cards, they can be considered very good and very fun or very, very bad based on their range, right? So I think Udalric had a bad range. Udalric with any card from the graveyard, if I'm not mistaken, he would play any card from the graveyard.
Yeah.
So it could be
except golds.
Except golds, but it could have been like I definitely played a game once where I got like a 20-point champion of champions. It's like some random game that I was playing. But at the same time, you could just end up getting like a dead Elven Mercenary or something like that. And that range is so crazy because especially when you're playing against Skellige, like in a mirror match, you can grab like Genja and that's huge, or you can grab a Freya in round 1 and it's not good. So, like, I mean, it's like if it's like the stuff that's kind of very crazy range where it can grab a bad thing or a good thing, and then there's also crazy range where the worst outcome is still very good and the best outcome is like really, really strong. And I think a good example of that is Hearthstone's Tuskar Totemic of old, when it could play any totem at all before it was changed, because it got nerfed because its range was way too strong when you get like the totem golem and stuff like that.
Yeah, the ceiling was way too high. Yeah.
So, I mean, that's kind of how I feel about it. And I love what you said, TrueDawn, removing player agency when the RNG gets too extreme, where it's just like, oh, you would have won that game, but your opponent just played into some, pardon my language, played into some bullshit and just beats you, like getting rivered in poker.
Yes.
Like, it's just, I should have had that, right?
It's like we can look to Hearthstone's history for this, because they've gone through some pretty egregious design mistakes. One of the biggest ones, my pick for worst design card all time across all card games is Implosion, because Implosion, for anyone who doesn't know, was 4 mana and it deals 2 to 4 damage and spawns 2 to 4 M's based on the damage it did. So if you high rolled it to 4, you won the game, and if you hit 2, you lost. And like you'd frequently have to like target a 3 health unit, and the game just got decided on what it rolled, and it was like literally just made the game like decided by RNG. Stuff like that, and Knife Juggler and Ragnaros that like have board impacts on the basis of a dice roll are very, very bad. And it's a little bit different in Gwent because the board interacts differently than it does in Hearthstone. But in general, you want the RNG to essentially change outcomes at like the same rate. So for example, like these discover mechanics and stuff, you want the range in a place where it's not necessarily like the low roll is below rate and the high roll is like above rate. You're just pulling from a pool of things that are all like the same raw power level and like making your choice from that point. That's obviously like harder to do. Like a pool needs to be like more constricted than that. So it's especially with situational things like Uma, we could talk about later, has like a pretty broad range. I think you actually could have made that card like boost by 2 or something, especially when you compare it to Royal Decree. But again, it's just about making it so the variance doesn't affect the game. Like the player should have a decision after the variance takes place. It shouldn't just be, okay, this happened.
Yeah, true. I mean, remember Old Donor? Like he was like possibly the worst RNG card in Gwent, because if you donut at the start of a match and you got the right pull, you literally won the game. Yeah, and we don't want these kind of cards, right?
That's a bad example. Yes. That's really bad.
But I think they the devs heard that, like, and that's why these cards got changed.
Yeah,
I mean, obviously, like they saw like I'm sure the play rates and the complaints and some of the tournament stuff that happened. It's like, you know, maybe this is going in the wrong direction, and I think that it's shown through Gwent's history from closed beta all the way up until now that they've wanted to always have some RNG cards in the game, but they want it to be very Gwenty, and they want it to be kind of like very fitting for the play style of Gwent, as opposed to something like more like arcade style like Hearthstone is. And some of them have been hits. I think Dijkstra, it's becoming so like ingrained that that's just the name of the card. Cards like Dijkstra, where you can kind of control his outcomes. You can put cards in your deck that make it so his outcomes are more likely to be good. You can thin your deck so they're better later on. Cards like, and of course in tournaments, Dijkstra is obviously like one of the highlights of almost every tournament. When Dijkstra drops, what's he gonna get? And I think that a card like that, I mean, some people don't like Dijkstra. I love Dijkstra, not just because I get to cast Dijkstras, but also because Dijkstra is just, you have enough control over it so it's not absolutely crazy. And I think that that's closer to where we want those cards to be. And then cards like Old Udorik and Old Donar and, that kind of stuff has been very, very shaky. And I also wanted to say just your comment about Uma, and I think we can go on to talk about Uma and maybe just, because this just dropped right now. TrueDawn, you said that Uma might benefit from a boost, and we'll talk. Hold on, I'll just read the exact text of Uma, because this was released like just now. You might be listening to the podcast and not know, but Uma is it's Uma's Curse. It's actually a special card because he's not really a unit, right? So Uma's Curse is a gold special card that spawns a gold unit, and then Uma will transform into that unit. Why I think that it's okay that it doesn't have a boost is because Royal Decree kind of takes a gold slot away. You're really only playing like 3 gold cards with Royal Decree, a boosted version of whatever you pull in the other 2, whereas in this case you actually have a 4th gold card. So I think that the boost might make it almost not better because you have less control over it, but it's fair that it doesn't have the boost. but it's actually, I think, like, the card excites me. I think it's really fun. I like playing fun cards like this. Like, it's but it's pretty wild. Like, it can be any gold unit in the game, any faction or anything. Like, that's, you know, you could end up with some real turds, right? You can end up with Kahir and you're not playing Nilfgaard, and that stinks. Like, there's a lot of stuff
You
in
can
there.
end up with Saskia Dragonfire.
Yeah, Saskia Dragonfire, Kahir, and like a Rainfarn where you don't not have any disloyal units. Like, it could be really bad.
They're making something with that card, I have to imagine. But like, my original thinking on Uma's Curse was that Royal Decree boosts by 2, and that's essentially discovering from your own deck, from a pool of cards that you put there on purpose. And Uma is pulling from the game, and it's like a much wider swath of cards that may or may not be good. So I think on average, you're going to get something that is below rate on something you would put in your deck. So boosting seems to make sense, at least in comparison to Royal Decree. So it's like a minor numbers thing. Like, I still like the design of the card. It's still going to be fun. But if you wanted it to see more competitive play, the numbers might be too low in its current state.
Do we want it to be competitive, though? I mean, you take the risk, right? I mean, I wonder if it would even be considered a competitive card, even with the boost.
I understand erring on the side of conservatism, like at the beginning. Like, if you're not sure, you just like don't make it that much better. And it's like, okay, it'll be a fun card. Because if it's like, if it is played a lot, and actually, like, Uma's a card, if it was played a lot, that's fine, because you're just like having all these golds present in the game, like various games, and it's not like any of them are OP. They're just golds that exist already. So actually, like, that wouldn't be awful. It wouldn't like be a horrible RNG card to have present.
I mean, I would be pretty salty if I get like Uma into 29-point Igni or something like that. But otherwise,
playing Uma like, ooh, I need an Igni. Potential.
Yeah, I can imagine like Red Mage Man, shout out, would love to play this card. Like, he would play the shit out of this card.
He likes RNG stuff? Is that Red Mage Man thing?
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. He plays Avalok the Sage, I imagine.
He invented the replay Avalok the Sage deck. So this is, I think you will like this one.
We did just mention it, so I think maybe this is worth talking about just because it's such a crazy card. Saskia Dragonfire, 8 strength, neutral gold card. Neutral, not Scoia'tael. Banish your hand and draw that many cards. Can you guys think of a situation where this would be like a strategy you can consistently execute that would help you? I can only think of like 2 outlandish scenarios, one of them being a mulligan deck where you mulligan away all your good cards to build strength with like officers and stuff, and then you nuke your hand and you draw all those cards again. And that's like so far-fetched in the first place. What do you guys think about Dragonfire?
Seems trash.
Yeah, it's unless there is something that incentivizes you to draw your entire deck and is okay with banishing many cards from it.
Anything.
You
need to put bad cards in your deck so that you can banish them. It seems super weird. Maybe there are multiple cards in the set which we haven't seen, which encourage like to do this kind of stuff, but no.
Yeah, as of right now, there's nothing. But if like things got value for being banished, or like there was like some really big incentive for like drawing your whole deck, then maybe there's something there.
Yeah, I mean, like the thing about it is the banish, right? It's like the cards like never existed in your deck.
Yeah,
it will never.
If it was
back.
discard, it would be busted.
Oh, it would be so good.
Oh yeah,
it would be way too good.
Oh, that would be.
Yeah, for sure. Agreed.
Nice. That would be great.
So there's a couple other things that I wanted to talk about very specifically. I think one of them is I want to talk about the Werewolf's immune tag. And I think immunity has been a thing that the community has, if you follow a lot of the threads on, when the gold immunity changed, like cards like Yennefer Conjure and Triss Butterfly Spell, like they got worse since they could just be removed and they don't actually have like that round dominance that they used to have. Really, when all the immunity was moved from the game, there was an idea like, oh, maybe some things should be immune. And I wasn't really a big fan of the idea that there'd be like these exceptions put in for gold cards, because then things just start to get confusing again. And that's, I think, why originally all gold cards went to be completely impervious, and then all gold cards went to being completely affected. So this immune tag being added to the game is this implication that they're wanting to bring some level of that back. And to my knowledge, I think you can still scorch an immune werewolf. I think that it's just targeted effects. You can't target it with anything. But I don't know if you guys
you
dug up any other information. You can't thunder it, but if it's the highest unit on the board, you could scorch it. Is that correct?
I think so, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. How do you guys feel about immune being in the game?
It's weird. Like, we had immunity before, right, on gold cards, and it kind of makes sense, but now they kind of use it as a sort of balancing tool. Like, they know certain cards won't be good if they are not immune. On the other hand, I don't know why you would add it to this werewolf card, because unless Moonlight has something to do with strength and buffing and stuff like that, but this just seems like a vanilla unit. Why wouldn't I be able to fonder it, for example?
Yeah, immunity in that particular card, it does seem weird. You don't want to do this a lot. Like Magic has had problems in the past with hexproof. Whenever you just like can't interact with what your opponent is doing, that leads to like very bad gameplay experience. But I do agree that there are some cards, chiefly like Bloody Baron, that just like straight up does not function if it's not immune. So I definitely think that there's space for it to like exist, especially like on Bloody Baron. The amount, like, you have to do so much work to have it like be a reasonable point total, and then like if you did make it immune, like, I think it's okay for that card to be immune because you're incurring like a huge deck building cost. You have to go through this like whole journey of killing things throughout the course of the game to make it like relevant. So in like cases like that where there's like a cost associated with it, I'm okay with giving stuff immune, but you do have to be pretty judicious about where you throw it out.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And the thing about the werewolf, like the idea that since we don't know anything about Moonlight, there's not too much speculation we can really give, but we can assume that it's some sort of boon, perhaps, that's affecting the board. And the wording is very interesting. Strengthened by 7 on contact. Like, that's not wording that we're familiar with. So I'm worried that it's going to enter like Ancient Foglet territory, where if you can't get your Moonlight to stick, the card's going to just be crappy and you're just not going to play it. So I feel like I don't want cards to like, I don't know if I want it to be like that, but I mean, there's still so much unknown stuff about Moonlight. So I really think that we can't really evaluate this card. But I think the immune tag specifically, though, is very interesting.
My assumption would be that Moonlight is generated from several different cards. It would be weird if it was like something that could only be spawned from like one card. Like if there was like a Biting Frost card, but boon Moonlight. Because you would like want, this deck seems to be like pretty reliant on it, and you would want like multiple sources to gain it, and you don't want the exchanges to be binary where it's like, here's my Moonlight, and like you remove it, like here's my Moonlight. Like, you kind of want it to be more granular than that, or more dynamic than that. So if it was like attached to like other units, like if there's some other werewolf that brings Moonlight with it, or like some spell that like when it kills something like spawns Moonlight or whatever, like stuff like that, I would expect is how it spawns.
Basically, a woodland spirit with Moonlight.
Attached. Something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah, I think it's cool, like the idea of there being more boons in the game. That's obviously very exciting. We've only really seen it on Ale of the Ancestors, and that card is, well, you know, it is what it is, right? So, I mean, I want there to be maybe more, like, I guess, viability to cards like this, and like more potential for that. But we see Weather is still being played. There's lots of cards that can make use of Weather. Ale of the Ancestors effect is attached to that card. It's not like you can just have a Golden Froth special card that you could like apply with an Elven Mercenary or something like that. So I think that we just need to have a bit more fleshed out kind of boon sort of selection or system that's in place for stuff like that to work. So Moonlight might be the beginning of that. The devs hinted that perhaps on the next reveal, again, which they said is going to be happening potentially this week, they may finally reveal what Moonlight is. And if they're revealing what Moonlight is, and it's something that's row-based, or it's something that's maybe not row-based, maybe we find out what the new stuff with the rows are, kind of based on what we saw with Boulder and what we've seen with the Peasant Militia. There's something going on with rows that's new that we aren't ready, that we can't anticipate yet. So, I mean, maybe that's something else that we should probably talk about. When we look at stuff like Peasant Militia that says fill a row with peasants, 1-strength peasants, it's a bronze neutral special card. Or we look at Boulder, which was just released, just revealed, not more than an hour ago at this point, Boulder reads, deal special organic neutral bronze card. Deal 7 damage to an enemy and move it to the row above. If the row is full, destroy the enemy instead. So there's something about, there's a maximum unit to row is what that's suggesting, right?
Yeah, there definitely
This leads to so many questions. Like, if a row is full and I try to move something in with a harpooner or a dwarven mercenary, does it get destroyed as well? Or is it just with Boulder? We don't really know yet, right?
I think if there wouldn't be the special text on Boulder if it did. There wouldn't be a need to like specify that if that was the case, I don't think. Like if just moving anything to a full roll destroyed it, you wouldn't need to put that text on Boulder. I would assume that like it just wouldn't be a like legal target. Like if you put like your harpooner across from a full row, it wouldn't do anything.
So I mean, another question that this raises for me, let's say there's a max amount of units per row. So we don't know what that max is, but we can make the assumption that, like, you've seen some of the board states that some of these full test decks can put out. Can that deck no longer exist now because there's no longer room on the board for it?
No, it would depend upon the limit. Like if it's 10 units per row, then that's fine. Like that deck didn't really surpass that. I mean, it does cap the ceiling to an extent, but like not in like a way that matters. So like, yeah, like go wide decks will be like curbed to some degree, but I'm not convinced it's by an amount that matters. Yeah. And also I actually think we can discern the row like size based on peasant militia, because like the average stat of a bronze is like 10 to 12 and peasant row fills a row with peasants. So I think like somewhere between 8 to 12 is probably like a safe bet for the row width, because that would be about how much strength you'd expect to put in a bronze that made multiple bodies.
Like that card's going to be crazy good with Kidwini Siege support, right? Like if it works the way all the other spawning cards work, like Germain and stuff. Like if that's like if that
crazy with
if that creates 7+ bodies, oof, I don't know. That card
just
might be really good.
Yennefer. Just imagine Yennefer. Just imagine turn 1, you spawn 12 peasant militia, and then you Yennefer. So the round is over, basically. You go into the next round, you play your other 2 peasant militia, and then you renew Yennefer. Oh no, please no.
No. We know it's at least going to be 5, because there are like Germain spawns 5 things, so it's like minimum 5. I would guess like it's probably like 8 or 10 is the limit.
Yeah, I think I would go there. I would think that 8 or 10 probably makes the most sense, especially if you have other. I mean, Germain is the one that's the most like that's the 5. Like, there's not going to be anything more than that, it seems. So I mean, I can't imagine there being more than that. Peasant militia being the maximum now, so we have a maximum, and then we have like a large part of a row in Germain, which is a neutral card, so you can see that a lot of that. So it's really interesting, and I think that, you know, I'm looking forward to hearing more about this. So we have what is Moonlight, what's going on with Rose. Like, these are the questions that need to be answered right now. But there's more, like there's so much to talk about, and we are still, just in case you're just tuning in, we're grazing over some of the stuff that we've seen. We're not going to talk about every card. There's already 40 cards, and there's going to be even more. I wonder how we're ever going to actually tackle this. Probably going to have to go back on doing faction by faction podcasts. But let's talk about the Viper School Witcher. This is one that I wanted to talk about because it's a card that you set its power on the deck building screen, and I think that that's a really cool idea. And I wonder if there's going to be more cards like this. Well, how do you guys feel about Viper School Witcher? TrueDawn, you can start on this one.
It's a really cool card, and this is the upshot of doing things in a full set format. In the beginning of like Gwent, like when they were releasing new cards, the cadence they were doing it at, I was concerned because when you only release cards like 10 or 20 at a time, you can't actually push new mechanics. Like you can't have like this deck exists when you're only pushing like 20 cards. It's not like you don't have enough support for it. So now that they're doing an actual full set, you can push things like this that like has this whole like deck building puzzle, like how many things do you want to do, because obviously the more alchemy cards you have, the less creatures you have, meaning the less targets you have for your alchemy cards, so there's like some balance. So this allows you to like make the werewolves in Moonlight and that deck and like all of this other stuff and like the new cursed Northern Realms. You can push all of those new mechanics because we actually have a full set. So I really like the fact that that allows us to do that for Viper School Witcher and other stuff.
I also just want to make sure that you guys know that Viper School Witcher is a 7 strength unit that deals 3 damage, increased damage dealt by 1 for each alchemy card in your initial deck. So sorry, I got to make sure I'm describing these cards because they are all brand new and maybe some people haven't caught up.
That is fair.
Delta, what do you think about Viper School Witcher?
Oh, it looks really, really strong on paper. Like this is targeted removal. Obviously, values could change, right? But the 1 damage per each enemy card is already really strong. Like just put 4 in, and you have like a 7 deal 7 removal, which is like a buffed up Swordsmaster, and these can hit really hard. And you have them immediately. Like your opponent plays an Enforcer, you just kill it. You have a Thunder on call on everything. This is great. Like a really, really great card.
Yeah.
And alchemy cards, like we got a new one just revealed as well today, which is also really interesting and great. And then we have the beer, obviously, which is like it's just 12 points, and you can play it with the tutor. And yeah, alchemy NG seems like it can be really interesting. Like it's getting some really good cards.
Yeah, you could actually like tune Viper School Witcher's damage to like the things you care about. Like if Nilfgaard's still a thing, or like Nilfgaard Spies is still a thing, and like Imperial Brigade is what you're trying to kill, you only need 6 alchemy cards. Like there's not a huge amount of upside for going higher than that. So you can actually tune this thing's damage based upon what the meta is.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that Viper School Witcher, I think the values might not stay this. It just seems really strong to be a 7 strength unit that can, even
Everything
with 1
looks
core
juiced.
bronze. Yeah, you
think
everything looks strong?
I think the scaling is different. Like this werewolf, the alpha werewolf's 12. Like all these other silvers are like over 10. The bronzes seem like higher than like Tormented Mage, Damn Sorceress. Like they're all above 12.
Everything like winch as well. Like it seems like power creep, but I'm sure that they will adjust the rest of the cards.
I would characterize it as
like.
I would characterize it as rescaling.
Yeah.
But then I feel like that's fair, and then you see cards like Striga, which just seem like underpowered, like grossly underpowered when you compare it to even like even when you compare it to like Nithril, like why would you even want to take that chance? Like
especially to a non-monster.
This is a 5 strength silver card that was released for monsters. Deal 8 damage to a non-monster unit. Like, it just seems like a bad decision to put that card in your deck when you can put so many of these other great silvers that have been shown or exist already.
It's a noob trap.
What's that?
Just put Parasite in.
Instead. Parasite just seems Parasite's that one's deal 12 damage or boost by 12. I mean, it's a monsters card, but like rip Manticore, like Manticore Venom's changing, right? Like when you look at Spear, and you look at Parasite, like Manticore Venom's going away for sure, right?
I mean, Parasite's faction specific, so it's okay for it to be like strictly better than a neutral card. But yeah, you're correct. They're probably changing it because it's too much better.
It's a little bit on the high side, and I think Manticore. I think like there was another card that made me think that Manticore was like changing for sure just due to power level, and I just can't search my mind for it.
There's a bunch that check health in hand, but yeah, I forget.
Oh yeah, I think it was just Spear. Like I think it was just Spear. And the example that Luigi used on the dev stream just now was you can reveal Imperial Manticore in your hand, it's 13 strength silver, and then you can just deal 13 strength with Spear. Now that's a specific example for monsters once again because not every faction has access to a high strength bronze or silver unit like that. But usually like Manticore, I mean maybe that's not the greatest example, but it's a bronze card. It's a bronze card that can do 13 damage on the top end, I guess, when you're looking at monsters, but you can still probably get like, you have 11 strength on like an Nilfgaardian Knight. Let's just use an example. Like it seems like you would never use a silver slot for Manticore Venom like ever in that case, but maybe that's just left in the game. Maybe so it's a bad choice for Isengrim Outlaw. I mean, I don't know. I don't know.
Maybe it is. What do you guys think about the new alchemy card which was revealed today? Pultease Ointment. This one is insane.
So
it's gonna depend upon how many more things we get with 5 or less power, right? Because that's
it's a Nilfgaard, right?
It's a Nilfgaard specific,
so it's not as bad. But I think it's really like I gotta get used to like resurrects outside of Skellige and Shani again. like from your own graveyard, basically. This is really, it's interesting. I like the idea behind it.
I also like how they made it 5. Just like, no, you cannot get back and forth server
Yeah,
game with this.
exactly.
Yeah, it's like, no, that's not happening.
Yeah. But you can get back. It's interesting. You can get back the Alba heavy cavalry, which has the potential to be a very high strength bronze unit. I mean, it's not a great card. It's not seeing play, but it's still, because of its base strength, you are resurrecting like it would be feeling like resurrecting like the bear, the young berserker bear in Skellige, like yeah.
Even the card they were like spoiled it alongside Slave Driver. Like Slave Driver interacts pretty well with that card because you're essentially getting a full strength bronze +3 for the Resurrect. Like normally the Resurrect would like be balanced because you're getting a smaller thing, but like you get a real bronze.
And you can tutor the card as well, right? You just play how is he called again?
Vicovar Novice.
Yeah, you just play Novice into Poultice, into Slave Driver, and you got a nice finisher. Like, this is close to Barclay, basically. In terms of it's really crazy.
It's like Barclay style. It's like very Skellige, sort of like the Skellige big res like finishers in round 3. Just going to quickly recap the cards that we're talking about, though. Ointment, also known as Poultice, on the reveal page, which is playgwent.com/ whatever your language is /card reveals. It's kind of hard to find, I think, on the main site, but if you type in card reveals into Google, you'll find the page. The Ointment is an alchemy special, Nilfgaard special, heal an ally and randomly split 5 boost between allies, or resurrect a bronze unit with 5 or less power. And one of those units could be the Slave Driver, which we talked about, which is a 3 strength officer. Spawn a bronze unit from your opponent's deck, which is pretty good. That's possible that card late game might not be very good, considering like how your opponent can thin. But early on, I think this card's really good. I think this card will definitely see play.
So when you think about it, like you're choosing from 3, and most people run like 3 of 3 different bronze units, and then like other stuff splashed in. But you're gonna like be able to kind of tutor for any bronze from their deck most of the time, and like you're gonna be getting a good card because they put it in their deck on purpose.
You could even chain.
Yeah.
You could even chain like.
The mirror.
The mirror.
No. Yeah. No, that would be crazy. No. You could get like a Priestess of Freya, resurrect a slave, get another Freya, resurrect another one. Like the potential is crazy.
Yeah,
for sure.
You could do a lot of stuff.
One more card that I wanted to just address, and this is like a lot of the cards that I have noteworthy cards are ones that were from the previous dev stream on Thursday, November 30th. It was Geralt Erden. So Geralt Erden, first of all, great to have another Geralt card back in here. And it's looking like it's going to be a 5 strength body. It changed a couple of times, I think, before it like settled. But Geralt Erden has the old like closed beta, like Gwent just got. You can play Gwent for the first time. Old Dimeridium Bomb effect of resetting all units, on top of the fact that it's removing all their tokens like Resilience, Quen, any other future tokens they might add, like Weather Immunity at one point in Gwent was a token that was added. Tokens being like the little visual effects on the cards, not like spawns from Germain. So it's been a while since we've referred to tokens, but Geralt Erden, old Dimeridium Bomb was a very, very, very strong card for Skellige back in the day, and now it's coming back. How do you guys feel about it coming back, TrueDawn?
This card is obviously very strong. I think it's a touch too oppressive, even though I don't love Spell Scoia'tael. Like that deck isn't a deck anymore. Like literally because of this card and this card alone. Because you like. Yeah, you could like maybe fade it, and like say for example, this card is only good against Spell Scoia'tael. Like there's no other deck that has like a bunch of green health units. Then you're still kind of in this toxic spot where it's like whenever you queue up with Spell Scoia'tael, it's like, well, if they have Yurden in their deck, I can't win. So even if people aren't running it that much, it's like it's so oppressive towards a particular thing that it kind of decides the game before you play it. So I don't love that. But we'll have to see how, like if Spell Scoia'tael its current incarnation still exists, how reliant decks are on green health stuff. Maybe the ceiling on this isn't as high as I think. So, if you put in the current meta, it would be problematic. But maybe things change.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I hate this card. It's not even released, and I hate it already. I think like from all the cards that have been released, like this is the only one where I really am like, can we please not? Like,
Yeah.
it's basically it's only favored for Skellige right now, I think,
Yeah.
because it just fits them so well. And then it's so good. Like doing the math with this, like not only spell scatter, like consume and any really boost archetype. If you use Commander's Horn and opponent plays Geralt Erden and maybe also heals his unit by like 5,
Yeah.
it's crazy how much value this card can get. And I think this is kind of the type of card which shapes the turn, because at the start maybe everyone will be running this and Skellige, and then you can't play boost deck simply because you will auto lose to this card. So you're forced to play Skellige yourself or some other strengthened archetype. No, just don't.
Yeah, and it doesn't even this is a card you could just play in Skellige normally because it's reset. So like if you're damaging your own stuff, like, or they damage your stuff, it like heals. Even if they don't have green health, you just use this as like a heal. So
yeah, it's basically an armor smith, right? Like at the worst case, it's like an armor smith with 2 less points. Oh no! But in other cases, it can literally win you games on the spot. This is like Dona, basically. It's a card which can win you a game on its own.
I think the ceiling is high. Like I was talking about it with Merchant and Petrify, and like this should have like 1 strength, and even if it had 1 strength, it'd probably still be too good.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's still old D-bomb, no matter how you look at it.
And it would be super frustrating to play against. Like, just imagine you're a new player and you queue up and you're playing your own cute little buff deck, and then Geralt Ilden comes out and you're just like, turns out I lost. Fun. Yeah, no. Just no.
It's a real shining example of how a card can look when you kind of look at it through the lens of what we're used to playing, like the decks that are currently out there right now. But this one in particular is one I wanted to talk about, because it feels like I can't imagine a meta where this card wouldn't see some sort of deck that it could just annihilate. Like it seems like it would actually it would temper the meta for sure. It would make
as long as boosting exists.
Yeah, as long as boosting exists.
By TrueDawn.
Yeah, TrueDawn will be back in just a second. But as long as boosting exists in some form, like even like while Dolbafana Protectors are the only, I think the term that was being thrown around a lot is the Unga unit, right? The unit that gets bigger and bigger and bigger as you do certain things. Yes, doggos. Doggos for the video viewers right now. Units that get bigger and bigger and bigger the more you play stuff, then, as long as those units are around, this card's going to be good. And cards like, Emperor Brigade is a card that's like would be drastically hurt by this card. It would win you any round, any single round you play against Nilfgaard. You can play it in round 1, win round 1, guaranteed.
You can also renew it. Which is just like great, nice. Now, like Skellige right now, in the current Skellige deck, they would run it immediately. They would just kick one of the bad goals, and they would just play Lugos, Renew, and Cole. They would crush everything. Why would you need Igni anymore? Why would I play Igni if I can play Erden, who does so much more and requires no setup? It's just fuck you. I played Erden.
Like you said,
guess I'm the better card player.
But yeah, like you said, even it just creates a situation where like everyone just like plays Skellige, and I guess like in the current tournament format, you're obligated to play other factions, but then it's still just oppressive. Like it's like this card is like quintessentially oppressive in the same way Muzzle was, except it's like worse.
Yeah,
it's way worse, and it's only for one faction, right? Like, you can't like with Muzzle. I can say, I can run Muzzle as well. So now I'm forced to do Muzzle as well, but it's fine. I run Muzzle. But if I'm playing Spellscartel, I can't put Geralt Ilden in my deck. It would literally be suicide. So this is really I don't like this card.
This is the one. This is like the card on my watch list for sure. Like this is the one that it seems like it's gonna be super scary. But it's hard for me to imagine a scenario where it wouldn't be scary in some way, just because of what it would do to deck building. And like, well, I can't play this because this exists. Like it's so strong. So we'll see how it works. We'll see how it pans out. but Geraldine is definitely on my watch list. I'll open the floor to both of you. If there is a card that was released recently that you wanted to touch on, I would love to hear your input on those cards. TrueDawn, was there anything that you wanted to talk about specifically about the new reveals that we've seen of the new 40 cards?
All of Skellige. I like all the Skellige cards.
All the Skellige. Yeah, we didn't talk about any of those, did we?
Yeah, dude, like...
No, we didn't.
So, like, Ornamental Sword, they spoiled that today. It spawns any Skellige soldier and strengthens it by 3. That's perfect, like, Discover stuff. That's, like, exactly what you want. It, like, synergizes with what Skellige is trying to do. The outcomes aren't so divergent that, like, anything is problematic. Like, that's perfect. That card is perfect. And then there's like Beastmaster. Beastmaster is great. It's a 1-strength unit that spawns the 11-strength bear. That I'm pretty sure will still be doomed. I'm not sure, but assuming it will.
Yeah, it didn't show doomed though on the stream.
Yeah, the reason I like
doomed, but...
the reason I like this card is it's actually very good in like the Skellige self-wounding deck alongside Stammelford's Tremors. Like this is like an incredibly strong Stammelford's Tremors enabler, especially alongside the other card revealed today, the big wolf whose name I can't pronounce, that deals 2 damage. Deals 2 damage to each damaged enemy. So you like Tremors and then deal that, and like the wolf is like 30 or something. So like there's like a lot of cool synergies going on, and also like Heim is fixed Rainfarn.
Yeah.
I love every card in Skellige.
Yeah.
Ulfedin seems like he is fixed Babyorn. Honestly,
yeah, it's very similar to like Babyorn. Like that's one of the
just good.
Yeah, that's one of the text boxes you would give Babyorn. Yeah.
I think that there's a lot. Stammelford's is a really good point. I mean, I experimented with some Warcry self-wounding stuff with Stammelford's with like great swords and like ways to manually trigger that, like with using archers and stuff like that. So I think that there's already like cards that will work with that, like the young Berserker. Procs on the damage. The great swords get better every time you damage it. So now you have more cards. Beastmaster is better with Stammelford's because you always will get that token spawn. Sorry, can't use the word token. I got to use the word something else. Always going to get that spawn of that other card. And then now this new other card, Ulfedin. Let's try to get that right.
Whatever that's called. Yeah.
8 strength gold card. Deal 2 damage to each damaged enemy. So if you're running Stammelford, that's brutally good, right? That's really seems like a really strong card in a long round. So like that would see play. Like that's a deck I can just kind of see it, and I can see it on the deck builder in my mind's eye right now exactly how that would look. So like I love that. Like I like seeing these archetypes come together, and I think that a card like this, when you look at this kind of stuff, also in that deck, I guess you might run this new card Dane, which is an old Axeman. It's an old Axeman. It's a silver card, showing how strong Axeman used to be. But he's an old Axeman. Anytime, whenever an enemy is damaged, boost its unit by 1, and he starts at 5. So,
and that's fine. That's fine by me actually. Like this card is it's good. It's like it still has counters. It's not like old X-Men who were just oppressive because there were 3 of them or 4 of them if you could operate it. But this is just 1 unit, right? You can deal with it. You can lock it. You can scorch it. You can whatever. It's fine by me. It's okay.
I like it. I think it's cool to do this where like you take old busted cards, but like move up their rarity so you only can use it once. Like any old busted bronze, like maybe okay if you can only do it once. Although with this guy you can like Siggy and restore it and stuff. But that's like a separate issue. There's also Skull Talisman, which I like a lot. I just like the design of Skull Talisman. It's a item that you can choose one, resurrect a bronze beast, or heal an ally and strengthen it by 3. You could actually play that in place of Priestess of Freya in a deck where like your primary res target is going to be like a bear anyway. So this actually creates some more diversity in deck building, and also creates like a modal card in that spot as well. So
yeah, it's like half a Freya, half an Armorsmith, and it's like it's good. That's exactly what I was suggesting, like a replacement for Freya in some decks. I was talking to Merchant about that at GwentSlam at one point, where that's exactly what it could be. So I think that like the cards that Skellige got seem to all work very well together, and then there's like other stuff that we're seeing for the other factions where we're not quite sure how well it's going to do.
Scoia'tael.
Yeah, Scoia'tael's cards haven't been fantastic, right?
So obviously, right? These are just like 6 cards, but they all seem kind of terrible. I think Borja's card is obviously like it's a play a random bronze or silver item from your deck, but in deck building you can make it so it's not random, right? So this is basically a tutor card for whatever you want. But
Yeah,
the rest of the
good.
cards, they're kind of like very, very conditional.
I don't understand Half-Elf Hunter.
Me neither.
We're talking about Half-Elf Hunter. Yeah, the 6 strength bronze unit.
It's basically a 12-point bronze unit, and you play it, and you have it's really vanilla. I don't know.
Yeah, because before, because it was originally spoiled as spawn a copy of it, not base copy. Yeah. So it was 3 strength, and you would like hand buff it, and it made sense, and it synergized with things, and it was cool. I don't understand its purpose now. Like I don't get out. Like, what's the joke?
I don't understand. Yeah. Can you guys? Let's talk about Xavier Moran, the like new dwarf card, which should help the archetype out. He reads: boost this unit by the starting power of the last dwarf you played.
Yeah, and he's 9 to begin with. So now this is one of the cards that I think I missed at the very, very beginning of the stream because I was still trying to set up the podcast. So like all the gold cards they showed, like they must have showed them rapid fire or started the stream early, but I missed like almost all of them. But yeah, so he starts off at a 9, and if you played like if you play a Marauder, he's a 16-point gold. Like he's just straight up like big body gold card.
Yeah,
like,
just
otherwise he does nothing. He's just a dude, right? That's how I feel about him.
But this doesn't really help fix like dwarven archetypes problems. It's just he seems pretty random. I wouldn't even play him in a dwarven deck right now, but because why would I? Like if you draw him later, he's absolutely terrible. Your finisher will always be Hattori into Barclay or Barclay, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know.
Because you have to play him right after another big dwarf.
Yeah.
So he like the optimal like use for this card, I assume, would be like you play Dennis and then this, and then this is like. How big is Dennis? Is Dennis an 8 or a 10?
8.
Yeah.
Okay. He always gets 80 seeds, so I think he's a 10. But yeah, like so like that makes this an 18 after that. So like sure. Cool.
Great.
And it's got to be the base it's got to be the base strength of the dwarf you played, right? Like it doesn't say
it does say starting power. It doesn't say base strength, it says starting power. So I think actually Dennis doesn't even count.
Starting power. Yeah, starting power. So it could actually be like pre-buff Dennis, because otherwise, like Sheldon Skaggs when this card would be psychotic, right? Because like Sheldon can hit double digits, no problem. So
I don't know. It's like
I mean, and like Half-Elf Hunter, I guess you get Eilerin out faster. Like you have two. You have 2 bodies. You have 2 elven bodies. So I think like there are cards that do react to elves on the board. So I think that there's probably still a place for it, even if it ends up kind of being the version that we see right now that's base copy. But I think otherwise you'd play it late, and then it's just another card you're playing late with hand buff, like kind of like Double Thunder Protector or like Swordmaster. And I think that the Scoia'tael playstyle is already doing that. So it's just another way to do that kind of. So I don't know if I'm.
What about
I don't know if it makes it better if it's not base copy for Half-Elf. Yeah, Panther is another one. Good. Yeah, deal 7. It's a neutral. It's a Scoia'tael 4-strength bronze unit. Deal 7 damage to an enemy on a row with less than 3 units. 4 strength, deal 7 damage, bronze card. You can use early for removal. So the condition is like totally fine if you're trying to like just secure a round early on. Seems pretty good on first glance.
Yeah, this kills siege support, enforcer, like a whole bunch of stuff, like just on like the beginning of the game when it matters. So this is like interaction that I guess Scoia'tael had with Yorvith already, but you only really had one of those. Your Swordmasters didn't get big enough to kill stuff till later. And like this also doesn't really have the same conditions. I mean, it has conditions, but they're like better early, worse late. So it's definitely a card that has a place. And also, obviously, in Scoia'tael, you have movement stuff, so you kind of have agency over how much stuff is in a row. You can move something to a row by itself and then kill it. So it's going to be hard for that card to be dead in Scoia'tael.
I don't know. I think it's quite easy for this card to be dead. Like in terms of current units, like it would be great. Like you would never run 3 of those, right? Because you can't fin them out fast enough, and then later on in the game it just becomes because the targeted removal is nice, of course. It's what Scoia'tael needs if you are not playing Spellatile, because then you just thunder whatever you want. But I don't know, this card seems a little bit like compared to the Nilfgaardian Viper School Witcher, and it's just super outclassed.
Yeah.
The condition is hard to match. I think sometimes it is like against Nilfgaard, it wouldn't be like a current Nilfgaard's price, but other decks play their stuff way later, and at that point you don't want Panthers in your hand anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know. It seems weird.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that I guess now at this point, the only Scoia'tael card that we didn't like at least touch on is is Mullane, which is just seems really bad, right? It's just like just like a value card that's not going to kill anything for sure. And I just don't really see like how this card can like be a better choice than other silvers personally.
Yeah, I think this card exists just to like explore row-based design space. Like that's why this card exists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Nice.
Well, I guess, there's only one more faction we haven't talked about in great detail, and that's Northern Realms. But I think we're going to talk about Northern Realms a little bit later. So I'll save some of this stuff because I do want to explore, like, maybe the future of Northern Realms. Well, this would be the segment to talk about it, so let's just talk about it. Well, let's talk about what appears to be cursed Northern Realms as an archetype that's appearing. And I actually, just from the lore standpoint, I love it because I love Witcher 2. I love Witcher 3 too, but I loved Witcher 2. And I think that exploring the whole kind of that Act 2 sort of ongoing battle forever between the cursed armies was so cool as like a focal point for the act, no matter which side you pick, Vernon Roche or Yorveth path. And it actually flavor-wise, completely on board with it. I'm completely on board with all this stuff. Seltkirk, these tormented mages, the damned sorceress, and maybe some more that we'll see. I mean, we see Vincent is also a cursed card as well. Kian is a cursed card, also revealed today. In fact, almost everything outside of Winch and Hubert, they're all cursed cards. So
cursed.
they're really getting a lot of support for this new archetype.
Cursed Northern Realms is supposedly a new archetype for Northern Realms, which I think is totally fine because we wanted to talk about Northern Realms in general anyways, and I would just slip this in right here. Right now, I think Northern Realms has kind of a faction identity problem again, which it had back in closed beta. Like, obviously we have machines, and then we have some armor stuff, and the rest is just points. And I think this is really good. This hits on my main problem with the faction, basically, which is adding a new archetype, which is fleshed out in itself, and it doesn't need like the Temerian package. Maybe it will probably still run the Temerian package.
Probably, I'll probably still see that.
It's too good if it doesn't get nerfed.
But like now, like I said before, we actually get they get to inject like new themes into each faction in Northern Realm. Like kind of desperately needed that because they don't really have one right now. So like we're gonna get stuff that is pushed, and there's also like some overlap. Like for example, the Tormented Mage. Like you don't need to play that in a curse deck. You can play that in like a Radovid control deck or whatever, and like do stuff with that. So there's like overlap between the archetypes, so you don't need necessarily need to like jam everything into cursed or whatever.
Yeah, like Damn Sorcerer seems kind of like how Panther seems. Like it's got a restriction on it, but it's still a 4-strength unit that deals 7 damage if there's a cursed unit on the row. And the Tormented Mage, actually, I think on the dev stream it was worded differently. Oh no, sorry, I see it now. It was just my own dumb eyes. It's a 2-strength. It's a 2-strength unit. Look at the top. Look at 2 bronze spells or items from your deck, and then play 1. So now Winch is not one of those cards. For a moment, I thought this would be crazy, but there's still like a lot of application there. So being able to have a bit more spell based stuff, like Northern Realms with Sheila and with like the Banard tutors, like they've had a lot of ways to like access their special cards, and like Scoia'tael has that as well with Ellen Mercenary. Some factions don't have spell access like Northern Realms has, so I wonder if that's going to be like a thing that we're going to really miss from like a faction like Monsters, which has never had spell access. So Northern Realms getting a little bit more of that is interesting. I think Tormented Mage is just straight up pretty good, I think, and it would be a great supporting card for more cursed stuff. And one more thing I wanted to say about cursed Northern Realms is that there was leaked artwork for Anna, who is going to be it looks like it could. Is it possible that that's a Northern Realms card that could be part of the cursed archetype as well? We haven't seen a card for Anna yet, but Anna being Foltest's daughter, who was cursed, I think that's actually going to end up being a Northern Realms card, because we've already seen the Striga as its own separate monsters card, but we've seen artwork for Anna, so I think that's probably going to be a thing that goes into Northern Realms as well.
Sure. Like
Yeah,
the cursed
definitely
archetype
possible.
is going to get pushed, and that's great. Like I really like this. This is great.
Ada. I was saying Anna. I meant to say Ada.
Yeah.
And,
Apologies. Thanks, Gowron in the chat for that. Ada, yes.
We could.
Not like this.
Do we also want to talk about 40-point Hubert?
Oh yeah.
40-point Hubert.
Just imagine you play 40-card deck, and then you Hubert, and then you play Faultless, right? First turn, and then you Hubert, and then you just pass because you won the round. Great, isn't it? And then you just play the game like you are Hansel, basically. You used Hansel round 1, but it doesn't matter. You still play Northern Realms cards.
Like that's how it's gonna work, right? There's like I'm trying to like logic my way into it not being that insane, but if you are running 40-card full test, which we saw actually competitively out there in GwentSlam 3, which we'll talk about right after this, we saw it out there. So like that being a potential option, like I'm trying to figure out how that wouldn't work.
Yeah,
like,
they
exactly
said
how
on
you're
stream
saying.
they want him to be a finisher, right? So you thinned out your deck as much as possible, and then you play Hubert to get the rest of the Faultless points.
Yeah,
But,
or
like,
you can play it early.
The
and
other
it's just,
option seems
Playing early seems way better.
yeah,
Yeah.
much better.
like Faultless points are good, and if you can access them all, which current Faultless decks do, they are it's great. But the tempo would be so insane.
Yeah.
If you win the flip and you play this, whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you just get to win round 1 every time, or like get out of it profitably.
Or get like 3 cards up your opponent. Great.
Yeah.
Or they have to use Igni Scourge or whatever, and then it becomes auto-include, which is also really bad.
Yeah.
Which we don't want.
Yeah. Hubert, of course, 7-strength vampire, drain, which is a new mechanic.
Drain,
Drain all boosts from units in your deck. So one thing about drain that I like is I think that there's kind of a muddy thing going on with consume right now, where there are cards that say consume but don't boost. So I think that hopefully drain is going to be something that might be applied to some of the consume cards like Ekamara, like drain the unit strength and apply it. I mean, it's weird, right? There's cards that specifically function off the consume tag, but it's kind of clunky wording. I think maybe just like
Sheet
Slizzard,
Troll.
Sheet Troll,
Yeah.
exactly. So maybe if they want to just reduce some of the paragraphs on these cards.
Drain seems like a good thing for units not in play, and also units where it would not be thematic for them to have consume.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah. We still need to work on that wording. Like, there's still some.
Yeah, keywords in this
clarity.
expansion could use work.
But
Yeah. Well, speaking of one last keyword, I guess this is the last thing I want to touch on. Selkirk has a new one called Duel, which is really a really interesting one. This is really cool. Selkirk, 7 strength, 3 armor, duel an enemy. And with duel, what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, duel is Selkirk is dropped, he's 7 strength. So he'll deal 7 strength to an enemy, and then that enemy, whatever strength it has left, will deal it back to Selkirk. And then Selkirk, if that unit isn't killed, Selkirk will then deal it back, and they'll go back and forth until something dies. So if you play Selkirk, I wrote this down. I wonder if I have my notebook here. I wrote it down already, but I think the math was like Selkirk can kill. Can absolutely remove everything and up to 13 strength. And I think a 14 strength, it will only leave the unit at 2 or something like that. Yeah, right. If it's a 10 strength unit, Selkirk stays at a 7. If it's an 11 strength unit, Selkirk will survive as a 6. If it's a 12 strength unit, Selkirk survives at a 5. 13th, he survives as a 2, and then 14, the unit will kill Selkirk, but he'll still beat the crap out of it anyway. So it's really an interesting card. It's an interesting way of doing removal. I don't know if it's like you'd look at this card and say that it's better or worse than like Eskel. I don't know what do you guys think about Selkirk?
I mean, go ahead, TrueDawn, go ahead.
Yeah, it's weird. Like comparing it to Eskel is interesting because obviously this can hit things with green health. Like that's probably like the biggest upshot. Doesn't ignore armor. It has like a high ceiling. Like it can kill pretty much everything indiscriminately. So like that matters, just getting stuff off the board. But on like a raw point basis, it's actually still pretty high. So yeah, this card's good. Like there's some overlap with other things like Eskel, like you said, but there's only like so many ways to have like golds do removal. So this is fine. This is cool. It also interacts better with boosting, is worth noting.
Yeah, right. Like if you play with Royal Decree, he's much better, right? If he comes out as a 9. So. All right, folks. Well, I mean, there's lots of cards to talk about. Check it out. If you are an English speaker, the address is www.playgwent.com/en/card-reveals. But for your wherever you are, that would change. But you can find card reveals on the playgwent.com site. Really great interface. I really like the way they do it. Really, I think it's staying updated with how some things are changing here and there, but I think things are settling in here, and you can really see the scope of the cards we're going to receive because there's still so many left to go, over 60 cards left to see, so check it out. But moving on, news-wise, I just wanted to recap GwentSlam quickly with you guys. Did you guys take in GwentSlam number 3, which just occurred on the weekend, December 2nd and 3rd?
I saw most of it. I actually didn't catch the finals. I have to rewatch it at some point. But I thought it was really fun. It was super awesome to watch Petrify. Petrify brought so much personality to that.
Oh yeah. He came to do a little performance. It was great to meet Petrify, actually.
There's times where all of that BM and whatever, the trash talk feels super cringy and forced. But it was so fun to watch with Petrify. It was great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was a super great event. I was amazed. Production value was on point again. You guys, the casters, were on point. It was just great. Had fun watching it.
I mean, the finals, TrueDawn, I mean, the finals were okay. I think the finals I struggled a little bit for some of the matchups, but I think that definitely I did some of my best casting at the event. I was there. It was really good. It was really fun, of course, to always go back to Vienna and do these great events for the community, to meet people from around the world. It's really awesome. Getting back late from the flight made it a little bit difficult, but I think we're having a great podcast right now. So, I mean, generally from GwentSlam, there were a couple takeaways. Unseen Elder had a really, really rough showing in 3 separate matches. Yeah. Unseen Elder was just destroyed. It was mostly just Neckers just not being drawn, but it really showed how important that is. It was just Petrify even said, I think he tweeted out coming from Shaggy, coming from Tailbot, coming from Petrify, Unseen Elder sucks, don't play him, because of how draw dependent that deck is and how it can just be completely annihilated.
I hate that deck. The linear one, the one that plays 600 Neckers. Mm-hmm. I don't love that deck exists because it's if it draws the Necker, it's indomitable. I played a game against it yesterday where I played 2 Corals because I renewed it, 2 Donars and a Muzzle. And in round 3, they had 2 10-strength Neckers in play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's complete nonsense.
It's high roll monsters, basically. Right? If you have the right cards in your hand, you just win.
Yeah.
Yes.
Most of the matchups, I mean. So, and on GwentSlam, they got punished for playing it because they did not draw Neckers, and I don't know which game it was. I don't clearly remember.
Several of them.
Yeah, it was many of them.
I think there was a game with 3 Necker warriors and no Neckers in hand. And,
sounds like Shaggy's game.
Bad.
Game King had a rough one too, I think. It was just bad. It just looked bad.
Bad.
Especially when you can contrast it to Gwent Open, where it was pretty good. And or at least it wasn't nearly as I'm trying to find different adjectives for bad, how bad some of those games were. Just watching and in the final match, I mean you know who won, TrueDawn. I'm sure you saw the results, and of course this will be spoiled, so if you're listening to the podcast right now, we're going to talk about who won and all that stuff, but starting now, because in the finals, when Tailbot Nilfgaard just annihilated Unseen Elder, it was so bad that Merchant and I were just trying to find stuff to say when Yuha was clearly winning that game almost 10 minutes before it was over. It was one of the most dominating matchups I've ever seen. Right after it was Full Test versus Unseen Elder, which was also a rough matchup as well. Yeah. So it just compared to Gwent Open, it was very stark difference as to how good Unseen Elder played there.
Yeah, there's the reason I don't like linear decks. I have to imagine it's hard to cast too, for the consume matchup where it's okay, they're online, nothing else matters now, or oh man, they didn't draw their Neckers, their deck doesn't work.
Yeah,
there's not a lot else going on.
Yeah, I remember those games. They were really hard to cast as well because once the opening hands were drawn, you could immediately see who wins. Any good player could see it, and the casters obviously could see it as well. And I think it was, I don't know if it was Panda and you, McBeard, or I think it was Panda and someone else, and it was just like, yeah, okay, nice game.
Yeah, credit to you guys for like doing as well as you can, because it's just like, yeah, there's not a lot to talk about here.
I don't know. I would just stand up and get a coffee or something, because like, there's nothing to cast. It's literally you see the hands and you know, yeah, okay, this is over. Next.
I mean, there were some games, I mean, and you say like any good player could see, because there were some games, because I would watch it, like if I wasn't casting into the games, I was watching it, like we had this nice viewing area with everybody, and most everybody was watching the games at any given time, and like you'd see the opening hands, and they would just be like, oh, he loses, right? Like it was like everybody kind of like just kind of like looking and nodding, and like especially in the Game King's game where he had to break through with Unseen Elder against Yuha, and he just wasn't getting the first game, the first try with Unseen Elder where he just didn't draw them. It was just like, nah, try as hard as you want, Game King. It's just you're not going to win this matchup.
Yeah.
But it was only the Unseen Elder games that were that cut, I think.
That's because like it's the most linear deck in the format right now, which is like one of the many reasons why I hate them, because like it's so reliant on one particular card. If you don't draw that one particular card, or if they have the answer to that one particular card, nothing else matters. Like it just it's like this giant black hole at the center of the game.
Yeah.
Nothing else matters, and it just makes it so there really aren't any decisions. It's just like an if-then check of.
It's the same with the Gold Weather Brewer deck. Basically, it's just checking for answers. Do they have a weather clear, and do they know they have to roast deck or something like that? And the rest is just it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. That's so like I've said this before, but I think Gwent is at its best when everything's a mid-range deck. Like you want to avoid homogenization, but I think that there's like a lot of different gameplay patterns you can explore when everyone's just kind of like doing Skellige stuff, but like just normal like fair Gwent things. I don't think the game becomes boring in that case. But like when you have like these nonsense decks like Old Dwarves or Old Spelltell or like this Consume deck or Mill, like. It's just not fun because the game's not being decided by decisions made in the game. They're being decided on like, did you draw the answer to this thing? Yeah.
Yeah. Rock, paper, scissors, queuing. Feels bad.
Yeah.
It happens.
I mean, the other takeaway was Full Test was actually very well represented for the first time in a tournament. We saw 40 card Full Test. We saw 26 plus card Full Test. You know, like more consistent lists, or like a more of a high rolly kind of greedier list. And I think it was good to see, like, Henselt was really, like, I'm trying to remember if anybody brought Henselt, but there was definitely Radovid in Full Test. There was a couple of Henselts, now that I think about it. But it was Northern Realms, I think, and we're going to talk about this just after we quickly just recap the rest of this stuff on GwentSlam. Northern Realms right now, full representation, all leaders, lots of different variations within the leaders. I think it's like one of the best factions for that reason right now. And it was good to see Full Test out there. And it was very interesting to see because Duha brought the 40 card Full Test, which did really well, I thought, compared. I mean, Duha got there, right? He took it all. He did defeat Tailbot in 4 games in the finals, with some interesting deck choices and card choices in his decks as well, like Succubus of all things. So I thought that, I mean, it was really interesting. I thought that his decks performed very well, and for the most part. And the other thing I wanted to talk about was, well, we can talk about Full Test. I mean, just generally, just kind of quick takes from both of you guys. 40 card Full Test versus 26 to 28 card Full Test. What do you guys prefer, and what do you think generally would do better in a tournament? TrueDawn, you can lead off on this one.
I mean, I'm from Magic, so playing anything other than minimum deck size is like complete insanity to me. But like, Gwent is different because you actually can get through your whole deck, and muster cards kind of change the math. So like you actually get to a point where like you can add more things to your deck because you have more cards, and that's kind of why the 40 card Full Test deck works. So I think that the 40 card Full Test is like kind of tuned to a point with like Dunbanner Tutor and stuff, and Vests, where you have like enough consistency that the deck like gets to kind of free roll the musters. So from what I've seen of it, it looks pretty strong, but like I'll never play it.
Fair enough. You like 40 card Full Test, right, Delta?
I do like 40 card Full Test. Although usually when I build a 40 card Full Test deck, I don't go that hard on like hardcore mulligan units. I'm always scared of my bad luck happening, and I'm just having like three Frosts, three Arethusa's, and three Light Cavalries in my opening hand and just conceding straight up. So I usually don't touch that many bad units. But I think for a tournament, I would take 26, 28, just because it's more consistent and the raw power of the current deck, which is being run, is just insane.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Like, I don't think the payoff for 40 card is like that much higher than like 27.
No.
Yeah. I think you're just eroding consistency for a payoff that isn't worth it.
Yeah, you get weather and light cavalry. These are like the two things. Light cavalry, sure, it's nice, and you can play a spy basically for free and stuff like that. Yeah, I get that, but I would always prefer like the more consistent for a tournament. Especially.
You don't want to lose to variance in a tournament.
Yeah,
like, you want to mitigate that as much as you possibly can.
You
like,
don't want to get unseen eldered.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I mean, it did work out this time, but like we saw Game King usually just kind of bring like the good decks because he like has enough confidence in himself where he can just like outplay everybody or at least like play well enough to be on even footing. So whenever you like think you're like average or above average against the field, it's just better to like not get cute.
Although he did bring Veteran, which was the only player who brought Veteran Skellige as well. So and it didn't perform super well for him either. I think.
I mean,
if I'm recalling,
I think
correctly.
all the Skellige decks are like almost the same. They're like all so close that like it's kind of just a matter of preference.
Yeah.
Like what hate you expect to see or whatever.
Yeah, and
Nilfgaard doesn't really matter.
It's true. And Nilfgaard was the same way. Every player brought Nilfgaard. They all brought Emir. They all brought spies, and there was really no surprises. It's one of the most highly refined decks in all of Gwent right now. And I think that this new card dump is going to need to shake things up a little bit because if anything is just not as good as spies, although I think we're already seeing cards that might change things. Like I think that definitely one of the biggest kind of shackles we'll be able to break from, I think, in like this new midwinter update is that Nilfgaard spies will change or hopefully see some sort of contesting in power, because right now like that deck is Bran is close as well, but Bran there's a couple of options, but I feel like Nilfgaard has a few options with like how many infiltrators or how many Nausicaa brigades you play. But it's like very tight right now, and I think the tournaments are showing that like Nilfgaard is like that is one of the most stable and solid decks that Gwent has had in a while.
Yeah, it's emissary. It's emissary.
Yeah, it's emissary.
It's like, you just get whatever you want all the time. You can thin your deck. You get
the deck doesn't have a fail rate. Like I mean, you could like talk about how the cards are like debatably overtuned, but like the main problem is that the deck doesn't have a fail rate.
Yeah, that's
you
a
just
good way to put it.
Play emissary. But the great thing is right now, everyone knows the deck. Like if you play like 2 hours per week, Gwent, you know spies, you know the deck list, you know the exact deck list because you've played it like 100 times by now. So everyone knows exactly what the ordering is going to be, what the finishes are like, and stuff like that. There are no weird surprises anymore, and that is a disadvantage because I think like the new Foltest deck, for example, over the past 2 days, it has been the most prominent deck on normal ladder and also pro ladder. Like it's fresh, it's new, and some people really underestimate it. Like the new Foltest deck is just as great as Spice. It's really, really strong and easier to play, arguably, because you just vomit points on the board and win.
A lot of people get stuck on level 1 of like the pros will find like the best deck, like the first best deck, and be like, okay, Nilfgaard Spy is the best. I mean, Nilfgaard Spy is a bad example because it is the best thing, but they'll like just write off other decks like, oh, you can't play Northern Realms, it's not Nilfgaard. Well, like you can do other things. Like there's room in the format, especially in Gwent, where information matters so much. Like knowing what's in your opponent's deck is like a huge thing. Yeah, so when someone's just playing cookie cutter Nilfgaard, even though it's like a better deck, if you know how to play around it and deal with like their 3 win conditions, you can still beat them.
Yeah, it's true.
Absolutely. So there's GwentSlam for you. You can check out the VODs on twitch.tv/lifecoach1981. And I think that he'll probably be posting some of the finals matches on YouTube as well. You can find him there. And overall, it was a great event. Looking forward to more events from Life Coach, of course. for GwentSlam, because it does affect how some players are getting to the Open. Freddie Babes used the crown points that he garnered from GwentSlam to make that extra push to get to the Gwent Open, and ultimately will be getting to Challenger as well. So his story was very influenced by GwentSlam. So it's not just money; it's definitely important. Every little point counts sometimes. But now we'll do. There's one more thing. One of the reasons why I wanted to get TrueDawn on the episode for sure was we missed talking about Northern Realms last time we went through all the factions on the podcast. So I think now would be a great time to talk about Northern Realms, because Northern Realms needs a little love from Commander Soren, and it's a good time to talk about them because there's a faction battle event happening right now in Gwent. So right after the strategy drop, we're going to talk about some Northern Realms.
Maybe not today and not tomorrow, but someday someone will find a way to take you down.
So Northern Realms, it's a good time to talk about Northern Realms, not just because of what I just said, but also because it is probably, when you're looking at the complete picture for Northern Realms, you're looking at all the cards and all the leaders, it is probably it's very well represented in all different leaders, and it's viable in competitive tournaments as well as on the ladder. You really can go so many different ways with Northern Realms right now, which is why I think it's the most well-rounded faction, just ahead of Scoia'tael, which also sees kind of all leaders represented at some point out there. Whereas when you look at Nilfgaard, Emir is the king. You look at monsters, Dagon is just not seeing play right now, and Unseen Elder is getting its ass kicked in tournaments. And you look at Skellige, where Bran and Croc are Bran mostly, Croc a little bit, and Harold not at all. So having and like not at all, right? So
yeah,
not on ladder, not in tournaments, you just don't see that guy. Like some people are still finding out that his voice lines changed. Like today, people are finding that out. So,
dude, I was so disappointed when I there's no more lazy mangers. It's like
yeah. I wonder why they removed that. There's been some speculation about it being like offensive to hear. Like some people could mishear it, and
I mean, it sounds like a really bad word. I like I don't know, but it sounds like one.
In English, sorry, what am I trying to say here? Like in I guess UK English, like doesn't it mean like an ugly person? Like it's not super offensive. Like it's just like ugly.
Yeah.
Right?
No, yeah. But I think like some people mishear it as a more offensive word.
Yeah. Perhaps that could probably be it, but I think that it does sound a little out of place when all of the rest of his voice lines are the same. But we're talking about Northern Realms, so yeah, the fact that all the leaders are so like close, like everything feels really really close, and like would you guys agree that Northern Realms is very very close? Like there's no like real front runner here, at least if you're looking at the ladder. Maybe not so much tournaments, but on the ladder, I feel like you could realistically take any of these decks like pretty high up there, right?
Yeah, pretty high up for sure, but I think Foltest takes the cake over Henselt and Radovid in terms of best deck and for ladder right now.
Yeah, and you could like like you said, all of the leaders are getting represented in Northern Realms. A lot of that is because the leaders are kind of like strategy agnostic.
Yeah,
like Radovid, like you can put in whatever. Henselt, you can put in whatever. Foltest, like there's a little bit more you can build around with, like if you want to do some swarm stuff. But in general, you can put any three in any deck. So it's not necessarily that like they're all like
archetype specific.
Yeah, like it's just you can. It's kind of like a bad thing because they don't foster any archetypes, but I guess it's a good thing that we get to see all of them. So.
That's true. I mean, they are different. Like Henselt tends to run more machines and tends to run like specific units that Henselt can interact with. Foltest is more likely to run like a larger deck size or more ways to benefit from the boosts. Although the way Foltest is run and Radovid is like very similar, you would still you'd still do the same thing that Radovid could do. Radovid a very general leader, but Foltest also a very general leader. Like it does what it does. No matter what cards are in your deck, it's still going to do the exact same thing. Henselt is a little bit more dependent on the deck. So, but I mean, with this new cursed archetype, we may actually see like a lot of heavy variation in Northern Realms. But like, I think that it allows you to like, there's some preference there. Like we think, well, I mean, I think I have yet to play this Foltest deck. I'll be completely honest. I haven't had a lot of time to really play, and I think that Foltest has really risen up there. But I think like as far as like just favorite deck to play right now, like I've been partial to Henselt personally. Are you guys on full test? Like that's what you like, or is there like another thing you like?
Uh, I mean, I do like every single Northern Realms deck, especially Armor, because if you remember our TGI game versus Mill with Armor.
One of my favorite games of all time, yeah.
Yeah, great game. And since that, I kind of love the Armor archetype, but it's like, right now. But I mean, the Foltest games play very fast, and that's always really good for ladder. And you don't have to think much as well. Like when I play handheld control, I need to think, how do I align units for Scorch and stuff like that. It doesn't matter as Foltest, you just play 20 points per turn.
You're talking about like the Kidwinny Siege support, like Jermaine Swarmy kind of like.
No. No, Temerian package and then Trebuchets and Siege Towers.
Okay,
and that's
right.
basically it.
Okay. That's how it's looking now these days.
Yeah, the Northern Realms deck I was messing with was more Swarmy. I just like using Foltest as like Yennefer. It's probably worse than like the deck Delta just talked about, but it's like I enjoyed it. So just siege support, utilize the siege support the best. Jermaine's kind of nonsense. PFI is like above rate.
Yeah, right.
So
yeah, PFI is still very, very good, especially like we're talking about getting siege supports, but also just generally with full test, really strong card as well. We talked a lot about full test already, about the 40 card versus 25 to 28. So we won't revisit that, but it does seem like it's like a kind of a consistency versus potential argument out there for full test. But the decks that you've been proposing right now, the one that Delta, and I think you posted the deck list in the Commanders Horn Discord very recently.
Yeah,
it does. I am looking forward to playing that, and I probably will play that next time I get a chance to play some Gwent on stream, just because it's very interesting, and there's also the faction battle going on, so why not? Has the faction battle affected the ladder lately? Like, is it just all Skellige and Northern Realms right now?
I've played mostly Skellige Mirrors.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's mostly Northern Realms versus anything for me. I don't think it really affects people. Like, it's not like you have to choose really, and then you are forced into playing one faction. You just can do your normal ladder life, and at the end, I get a free premium Dijkstra. So, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, it's not looking good for Skellige.
Yeah, I saw that. It's Northern Realms has got well over 50 at this point. Last time I checked, this morning. It's an interesting event though. Like, it's cool that, like, I'm not crazy about the idea that it influences the ladder so much. Like, it's as if like you were playing Hearthstone and everybody got the same quest: win X games with Hunter, win X games with Warrior, and you just Hunter Warrior all the time or something like that.
I don't think it does though.
It doesn't do that, no.
I mean,
a single game of Northern Realms or single game of Skellige is already enough to be in favor of that faction, basically. So I think everyone will still play what his preferred deck is. And if you're like on the edge, like, do I want to play Northern Realms or do I want to play Skellige today? Then you may decide for your favorite faction, but I don't think it influences the ladder meta that much. I don't know. I don't think it's that big of a deal.
Yeah, it seems like kind of a free roll event. Like, I've noticed a lot of Skellige Mirrors, but it might have just been like the part of the ladder I was on or whatever. I think it's like a cool event, like just to have an event to give people stuff for just playing the game normally like they would. So it seems like pretty close to a free roll. I'm okay with it.
So let's talk about Henselt real quick. I think that Henselt is one of the, like, as far as tournaments are concerned, I think that there are players that are bringing Henselt just because of how crushingly dominant it can be when you get to go second, because you can just pump up so much strength. Is it I guess it's kind of like maybe a greater conversation about regulated coin flip that we've seen in Gwent Open and now in GwentSlam, where there are land versions of the client that has been supplied where the coin flip is always going to be alternating, so you will never have to go first more than once, or you don't get to do it twice in a row. Like, game one you go first, game two you go second. That's kind of understood at this point. So it's influencing a lot of decks that are being brought, and Henselt is kind of being brought as like your red coin like special. How do you feel about overall the regulated coin flip? It's kind of like a side conversation a little bit to it. And do you think that Henselt is probably one of the best decks, it being one of the strongest leaders out there, like mathematically what you can do with siege towers and ballistas, sometimes with siege masters as well? How do you guys feel about a kind of that aspect right now? I'll let TrueDawn lead off on this one.
Yeah. I mean, you needed the regulated coin flip. I've been like advocating for that forever, just because like you can't have a game where coin flip matters as much as it does as Gwent and have someone like just win all of the coin flips in a series. That's complete nonsense.
Yeah.
So so like you needed to have it alternate And now that there's like a metagame around that, I think that's fine. The problem to an extent is like the only deck that's good going first is like Nilfgaard. Is there like and then there's like unfair like broken decks like Miller stuff that's like coin flip agnostic. So I like the fact that you can kind of bring decks that are equipped to go first or second. It just seems like there aren't really a lot of decks that are good at going first right now. So if like we can do that without making more mill type stuff, great, that'd be awesome. I don't know how we accomplish that, but we can figure it out. And Henselt is definitely one of the better things to do when you win the coin flip, because you just want to get ahead of your opponent and get them out of the round, and like the more points you can get sooner the better, and Henselt is probably the best at that. So
yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. Like especially with the coin flip thing, I think it's good that we have this kind of fix for tournaments right now. What I'm scared of is like, please don't forget about us normal ladder plebs. Like,
coin flip still needs to be fixed. This is just like a baseline thing.
Exactly. It's a baseline fix to help the tournament scene right now, but I still want my coin flip fix to be invented, basically.
Yeah.
Because, I don't know, losing 5 coin flips in a row on ladder feels just as bad if you lose 5 coin flips in a tournament. Although there's more money on the line, so
and it's not on stage, right? It's not like open to scrutiny, because it's like right up in front of, like, you got thousands and thousands of people watching it happen, and like at a really, really high level, obviously you don't want that to decide things. And especially it's very interesting because in the last 2 tournaments, very, very small sample size, of course, but the coin flip has looked as if it was very, very even. So, because it was like 53% win rate on the blue coin in Gwent Open, and I think it was like right on 50-50 in Gwent Open as well, or GwentSlam as well. So the players have been able to take that, and it seems like it's much more, it's less about the coin and more about how the players are playing the games, which is exactly what you want in a tournament setting, like absolutely. Yeah. But more decks that can do well going first. And I always felt like, because the Enforcer is so strong, right? You get that setup, and of course the way you can pull it out with Emissaries is very good. But I felt like Kedwini Siege Support was a card that kind of supported a little bit of like mostly proactive setup cards. Cards like that, if they are made better, you're more likely to have better time going first. I don't know if you guys agree with that, but I always felt like Kedwini Siege Support was something that you would be okay playing first, and just, like, you risk
Dragoon
removal
or something like that as well. Dragoon like too, just good setup cards. But the thing is, even with these good setup cards, I would always prefer to go on the red coin. Yeah. Like, there's no question about it. If you just because of how the way card advantage and works, if you lose round 1 on even, you're in such a bad situation. Like, it's really awkward sometimes. Yeah. Card advantage does not matter as much anymore as it did in closed beta and stuff like that, where last play was everything for some mirrors and most matchups, but it's still
still important.
Yeah.
I guess the last thing I want to talk about with Northern Realms, we're talking about kind of all the leaders and kind of all the archetypes that are out there, is Radovid. Radovid's interesting because Radovid can be kind of at the pilot of any deck, really, because he's just kind of a versatile 14-point double lock that it's just like a good card to have basically always consistently in your hand, sort of. So I think his general flexibility and power is good, but we see him more in charge of, like, the decks that we see Radovid in charge of are different from Full Test and Henselt, in that they're kind of like leftover archetypes like Armor, or this tournament Radovid that's running the beer, like Freddy Babes ran it, and I'm trying to remember what the other player, it was Duha ran it as well, a little bit more of a tighter version of that list. So I'm just wondering, like, it's weird because the beer in Northern Realms, like, it's Sheila that's kind of commanding that right now. Like, Sheila being a Shani Res, having the beer there and playing Sheila with the beer seems to be like the best part about it. But it doesn't seem like there's overall like a lot of synergy happening with the beer outside of Sheila. Otherwise, it's just kind of a 12-point play that you set up, and that's fine. But and then the Armor is kind of taking a back seat right now. Armor was around for a little bit. I think we all know that Radovid Africa meme was kind of based around the deck, and kind of got famous for that reason. Maybe not being famous for being like a really good deck, but just kind of famous for that meme. But like, Radovid's just kind of sitting in the middle right now. How do you guys feel about Radovid? TrueDawn, you want to leave that one off?
I mean, Radovid's just a leader you're going to play if there's certain things in the meta you care about shutting down, or if your deck is primarily proactive and doesn't have a lot of things to interact. like in its normal deck space, so you can just play Radovid, and Radovid's your interaction now. So you kind of get to consolidate your deck space. And it's like, I'm going to have all my interaction on this one card instead of like playing all these other silver slot things or whatever. So Radovid's not like really a card that goes into a particular archetype synergize with things. It's just a way to get interaction like a consolidated rate in a deck that would want it.
Yeah, you would play Radovid if the meta demands it. Like, if there are many locked targets and you feel like Margarita is not enough, and you feel like your deck struggles against certain things, like, for example, Borg or stuff like that, and then you play Radovid. Sure, why not?
Yeah.
There's no specific archetype attached to him because he's basically just a lock guy, and we don't have a lock archetype or something like that.
Yeah.
I thought about when the Witch Hunters were first came out, I thought maybe it would go into this direction because it would fit him from the lore, but so far, it's just, how do we want leaders to be? Do we want them to be fixed into certain archetypes, like Morvran is fixed into Reveal, or do we want them to be more like decision making for your deck? You got a deck which is an archetype, but then you either press Foltest or Henselt or Radovid into it.
I think I kind of like the way Northern Realms is set up better. And even like Skellige with Brand and Croc is very similar, where you can kind of play either of those across the various archetypes. Like there's pluses and minuses, but you can kind of justify playing like Croc and I like all of the Brand decks. So I like that you can kind of change the leaders, that it's not like, okay, you need to play in this deck and only this deck. Obviously, like you do want to kind of help foster synergized decks. Like you want to have different play patterns and like encourage people to do interesting things. But there is a point when it's like, okay, Morvran's only going to be ever played in Reveal and that's it. And you can't use anything else. Yeah. So he's like specific for that archetype, but he's only for that archetype. I mean, you could certainly like do other stuff with Morvran. There's one of the themes it looks like they're pushing is kind of like overlapping synergies, like having things that are like part of multiple sub themes, and you can kind of play it in one or the other or mush the two together. So when we have stuff like that, I kind of like the more like Croc type, like Foltest Radovid type leaders.
No, I think it's really cool. Like, there are some archetype leaders, and, you know, I think like Elder is probably like the crowning example of a leader that's very, very kind of wired to an archetype where, you know, a card like John Calvert, you could put him at the lead of any deck at all. Like John Calvert would be an amazing leader for any deck, but not so like obviously like not better than Emir these days. We've seen Calvert be a champ previously, and I think that he probably will come back because it's just a great effect that you are happy to play, and you're happy to play it twice with Cahir. So
the reason we don't see Calvet is because you have Emissary and you can already draw your whole deck, so why do you need Calvet?
Yeah, it's fair, right? You just get it through your whole deck anyway, and I think that it's tough,
like he's a
right?
Great leader. Like he's a testament to how broken Nilfgaard is. That he's
he would be so good in other factions, right? Like, give him to me in Scourge Hell or something like that.
He would be the best leader in like 4 of the other factions.
Yeah, it's great, right?
3 of the other factions,
So yeah, it's like, but it's funny because I think it's tournaments really, and like Pro Ladder and stuff like that, where your skill or your chance to go into it. I mean, it has to be like this, right? It needs to be faction restricted. Like if you could pick, we're talking about Nilfgaard. I feel like what I'm about to say is really stupid, but like if you could pick Calvet and Emir, like duh, of course you would, right? Like it's still Emir just being better than Calvet for that specific deck makes Calvet seem like he's underrepresented. But if you could somehow go into a best of 5 and bring 2 leaders, if you were just like blocked on leaders and stuff like that, like Calvet would be a second choice before some of the best leaders in other factions because of how just generally good his ability is. Yeah, that kind of thing. So I mean, that's like kind of a rounded out version of a rounded out talk about Northern Realms, and there's going to be a lot of stuff to talk about with Northern Realms as more of these reveals come out, because it seems like it's getting the most kind of new archetype support. In that, you know, we have machines and we have kind of swarmy stuff, but you know, that's kind of all we have. There's a bit of a homogenization. I can't cut it out either because it's live. Of some of the units, like you talk about the Temerian package and how that can kind of go into any deck, really. So I think that there might be some ways for it to break out, hopefully, and I'm interested to see the future of Northern Realms, and I hope we have more cards like Catapult, right, Delta? It's the best card.
Oh
in
yeah,
Northern Realms, right?
great card.
More catapults, yes.
More Catapults, right?
Definitely.
All right, I think that was that's a pretty hearty discussion because this is a long-running podcast because Gwent gave us a ton to talk about. From when I talked to you, TrueDawn, I kind of booked you like weeks in advance because I knew I wanted to do this episode, and this just happened to be the week where they dropped two dev streams between podcasts on me. They're trying to kill me.
I need to drop takes. We didn't even get to talk about Weavis Incantation, which is like complete nonsense.
You know, that's why not? Why not just tack this on to the end of the podcast? Because I mean, there's just so much to talk about. It's just a pile of stuff to get through.
Why can this card get crones? Like, why is it a thing?
Yeah.
why is that okay?
Oh yeah, I see what you mean, right? Weavis Incantation, 4 strength Bronster's Gold card revealed in the dev stream on the 30th of November. Strengthen all allied relics by 2, or play a bronze or silver relic from your deck and strengthen it by 2. All the crones are relics. Go ahead.
So, like, on both a power level and flavor basis, this is nonsense.
Weavis summoning Weavis?
Yeah, Weavis summoning Weavis, ridiculous. Also, 24-point gold, ridiculous. Like, granted, there's, like, sometimes you won't be able to mulligan away all the crones or whatever, but, like, this is it's so good. And, like, it's not even like, oh, I have a crone in hand, I can't use Weavis now. She's, like, still a million. Like, she's like, how this card's average is like 18.
No, it's really good, right? Yeah, because you can play it. It's allied. Allied relics being on the board, so you could play crones and then play Weavis, which is good, or you can play Weavis to get the crones without having them in your hand. So it's like a card. It's a Weavis card that works with Weavis. It is weird. Now that when you present it like that, it is a little strange for sure.
Like, even how much is Fiend? Like, if Fiend is like 8 plus what if you have a relic? 6?
11. Wait, if you have
He's 11.
It's 11 total if you have a relic.
11 if you have a relic.
Yeah.
So like, even then, it's like 16. Like, that's worst case scenario. It's 16. Like,
yeah, exactly. And then that's strengthened too, so that body goes in the graveyard for monster nest, fiend, or ghoul stuff as well. So, you know, then you wouldn't necessarily have to run Manticore anymore if you wanted to free up that for something else, because you'd have these 13 strength units in the graveyard, or you just run 1 fiend maybe with this card. But I mean, like, there's a lot of crazy potential for that, and it's not even because like they're trying to make relics an archetype. Yep. It just seems good, even if you can just grab like one really good thing, or crones, of course.
Yeah, it's like I do like the design of this card. To be fair, like, I like having a card that has 2 modes, one of which gets better later, so there is always an opportunity cost for like leaving it in your hand. Mm-hmm. Like, when you, like, the earlier you play it, like, there's a cost associated with that, and like that's kind of what exists on Weavis's first strength and all allied relics mode. So I like the design of this card. I just think the numbers are preposterous.
Yeah, well, they may be tweaked, but I think that as long as it has that ability.
Right? Yeah.
Wait, sorry,
I assume like they'll like, I'm not worried about numbers. They'll figure out numbers. So I just thought it was funny to point out that like this card's bananas right now.
Is it crazier than what Erden is able to do, do you think?
No. Erden's like, I can't imagine it goes live like that. You think Erden's a huge problem.
It also doesn't, like, apart from the ability, it doesn't really fit like Erden. Like, Erden is a trap. Why does it reset?
Yeah, it does like the opposite. It does literally the opposite of what Erden does. It removes Erden. Like,
I thought Erden was going to do something like slow down, because like Erden's like a trap or a slow down. Like maybe it like removed timers or did something with timers or something. I don't know. But then that would be kind of
Yeah. I think they can come up with something more interesting than just reset everything. Haha, Demeritium Bomb from old closed beta. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think that card just like warps the game in a really bad way. I just hope it doesn't go live like that.
Yeah, we are talking about Weavis Incantation, which is one of the new cards that was.
But I was talking about Erden. I think Weavis is just over too. Erden's a massive problem.
Yeah. I do a lot of fence sitting when there's a lot of unknowns, but again, like I said, I was trying to figure out a situation where it wouldn't be a problem.
It would just
right?
like everything would have to have like the same amount of green health in their deck for it to not be broken.
Yeah.
And there's just like nothing suggesting that Skellige is going to have green health stuff. So
Yeah. They changed strengthening. They just cut strengthening out of Skellige, and maybe we can talk about it being fine.
yeah,
Because but then it becomes unplayable, and that's also not what we want for a new
that also
gold card.
it doesn't make sense. Yeah,
It's just bad.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's so yeah, a lot of new cards are coming in, a lot of question marks out there, but some of them looking pretty strong for sure. Pretty healthy podcast, guys. I mean, we've been live for 2 hours on my stream at least. I mean, some of it was setup time, but I know this has been a hefty one. So we'll wrap it up unless there's any closing remarks anybody wants to make about any last new cards that were out there that are like really pressing or really hot topics that maybe we grazed over, or Northern Realms stuff. I'll leave the floor open just before we wrap things up. TrueDawn, you want to lead off?
I think there's like other cards that I'm interested in, but there will be a lot of time to talk about that later. I want to thank you for inviting me to the podcast. It was really fun. I enjoyed having an outlet to talk about this stuff, and it was fun talking about it with you guys and getting your opinions on it as well.
Yeah. Delta, anything you want to say in closing?
This was great. Honestly, we are just 40 cards in now, and there's still so much more to come, and so many more bad cards to be revealed, which I can then cry about, especially in Squirtle. So, I'm very excited.
It's insane how bad the Squirtle cards are.
In comparison, yes, for sure.
Right now, at least, it seems like every bad mechanic they thought about, they just put it in Square and see how it works out in the end.
Monsters gets like 24-point golds, and Squirtle's like, I have a dwarf that's like 15. He's okay.
16-point card that does nothing.
I don't know.
We'll see how the full set comes out. It's just funny right now.
It really is.
I mean, like my guilty admission is that I think Isengrim Outlaw is like super cool, but I mean the rest of it's not great, right?
I think Isengrim Outlaw can be entirely reasonable, especially if they bump its strength up. But like, I think if that's a 4 or 5, that card is like very reasonable.
All right, well, this is great. Once again, we are supported by our commandos, our patrons at patreon.com/commandershorn. Thanks so much once again for supporting our content. No email this week. I knew this was going to be an incredibly long podcast. So definitely send your emails, of course, to commandershornpodcast@gmail.com. And, of course, tweet at us at any time at commandershorn. TrueDawn, where can we find you when you're streaming or doing your content out there?
You could always find me at twitch.tv/TrueDawnFM. I stream every weekday starting at 9 a.m. Eastern. Around then, sometimes I'm delayed. But yeah, anytime you want to come see my stream, that's where I'm at. You could also follow me on Twitter at TrueDawnFM.
And, of course, you're on the Tier 2 podcast with Merchant and Petrify. Of course, you'll get to see TrueDawn on a weekly basis there as well. Delta, what have you been up to?
I don't know, food. No. Yeah, guys, if you want to follow me, you can like check me out in Discord. I'm like in every single Gwent Discord, and I rant about the game all the time. And other than that, you can also follow me on Twitter. It's at PhoenixScar. And sometimes I also stream on Twitch, very rarely if I'm in the mood, and mostly not Gwent. But yeah, you can follow me there at TrueDelta65. And I'm also sometimes I'm also in McBeard stream, and we play this good game called Divinity. You may want to tune in from time to time.
Yeah, I'm going to try to make that a little bit more regular because it is always a blast to play Divinity with you, and the chat really seems to love it. So Divinity 2 is a great game, as is Gwent, of course. But this will be it. You can find me, of course, I am on Twitter at McBeardCH, and you can follow me on Twitch as well. I stream almost every weekday. I am home. But I am traveling a lot, and I have a feeling I'm going to be really tired tomorrow. So we'll see. But I'll get a schedule up. I'm going to be putting my schedule up. That's going to take us all the way to Gwent Challenger, which is happening on the 16th and 17th of December. So all the way up until I depart for Poland for that event. So hope you can join me for some future streams starting tomorrow. And on YouTube as well. I've been a little slow lately, but I'm on YouTube as well. C/McBeard for that. Thanks very much to TrueDawn and Delta for joining us on the podcast. And thanks to everybody in the chat as well for hanging out for this entire thing. I want to actually rewatch this so I can see what you guys are saying. But I'm really happy that everybody could join us. And until next time, this is McBeard for TrueDawn and Delta. Best of luck on the path.